This is a test of the drumming system. I wonder how that sounded. So I will find out in review. The Wheel of Time. This is on the mind and in the heart today as we play for Storytelling Hour. What is an hour anyway? And let's talk about the Horus and the Jehuti and many other things. So you may notice I am in a new space. We are in the midst of a move from a place not so far away, but also very far away. And I'm surrounded by boxes and confusion and excitement and other things like that. I wanted to spend a little bit of time here with the divisions of the circle. This drum was made by a woman I have not met named Ann Keller. And I came across this drum in Mount Shasta many, many years ago and couldn't afford this, but couldn't not, you know what I mean? And so it left with me. The wheel in the sky keeps on turning, says Winter. I don't know where I'll be tomorrow. Yes, I do. I will be unpacking boxes right here and trying to figure out how to allow myself to release some of the things that I do not need. So you see many empty shelves. Jehuti had to come to join us today, and this astrolabe, and this Hanuman over here as well, and then the drum. So a few of you are here live now, Turanian and Discerning Light and Winter, I see you. How's this sound? Does this sound like a drum? It's weird, not only with like computer microphones, but with the settings. I'm broadcasting through StreamYard, so I don't know if it should do echo cancellation. Turanian, you say yep, that's cool. And one more test. What if I'm talking and drumming? Does it sound like somebody talking and drumming? Or do they cancel each other out or something weird? Could I actually do a drum journey here at Storytelling Hour sometime and for it to come through? So thanks for listening and reflecting. Winter says all good. Amazing. You know what? As long as we're at it, does this sound like a shaker? Rosalind says my computer speakers are not discerning. And does this sound like a flute? Cool. Well, thank you, everybody, for your reflections there. Maybe more music in our lives. That would be good. All right. Well, what's on the other side? Check out how cool this drum is. First of all, it's like way more comfortable to hold than many are because of this beautiful way that Anne ties the sinews together. And you can really see that cross, right? And the fourness within the one. But you see how the four are also divided into threes. So we get 12. I mean, in a sense, we get 16. Okay, well, those of you who know me know that I love to play number games. We've just moved away from a 3684 May Road. And May, the month of May, is named for Maya, the mother of Hermes, the same being for whom our daughter is named. I'm looking at her through a window right now. She's very strong, that baby. She's holding a broom right now. Anyway, and 3684, I love that because 3 and 6 make 9. And so in this base 10 world where we often play with, nineness and numerology, I liked that. 36 decans as well, if you speak that language. And then 84, 8 and 4 make 12, right? So the 12 signs of the zodiac. And the whole thing is a 3 and blah, 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 right? We've just moved to 2315. And 23 is like the number that helps spawn my weirding. I'm not the only one who would ever say that. And then 15 is Koa's favorite number. So that felt fun. 23 and 15 make an 11 and make 2. And that's how it was for me, according to my birth date as well. So that was a fun play. But I want to speak today about 8 and 12. Why are there 12 signs? Why am I speaking about this now? Because we're kind of at the time of the 8s. Have you ever cut a quesadilla? Do you have like the pizza roller? It really helps, And we cut it in half. And then we cut the halves in halves. And now we have 4. And, for me, that's good. But maybe there's more people to share with. Or you want to take some more time with your quesadilla, right? Then we cut those 4s in halves as well. And we make 8. Yeah, and that's just like the natural way to play. We could take that 8 further and go to 16, right? You know how it starts getting wonky and you start getting slices like this and slices like that. It's pretty tricky to be precise when you're just like eyeballing quesadilla cuts or whatever it is that you have circular that you're dividing, right? But like halves of the 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 halves, like the binary code, right? Which oddly, I feel we are more familiar with probably at this time than maybe ever before because of hard drives and, how many gigabytes or whatever, right? Because it's in that same binary realm, which really begins with 1 or 1, the all, and the 1 becomes 2 and 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, 128, 256. Like some of those numbers, 256. It's more familiar to us, I would suggest, at least to me now than it was when I was a kid. Because, you might spend more money to get the 512 megabytes, whatever. You know where I'm coming from, right? I guess gigabytes these days. It's crazy. I have this box of hard drives over here, and it's like, what's on those things that I need to go through that? So the binary code, which brings us 248, it's very natural. And 'tis the season. The sun right now is in the 18th degree of Taurus, so I'm late to this party. It's odd that these cross quarters on the wheel of the year, the times between equinoxes and solstices, or between solstices and equinoxes, are celebrated typically on the first day of a calendar month, right? Like Samhain on November 1st and Beltane on May 1st, rather than when the sun finds that degree of the wheel that is at the cross quarter astronomically, we often say, right? So what does that mean? If solstices and equinoxes, we'll speak tropical zodiac because it's the best solar calendar ever created. The solstices and the equinoxes, of course, happen when the sun is moving across a cardinal cusp, right? So 0 degrees Aries, East equinox, 0 degrees Cancer. North stis. Why do I say that? Because Earth's north pole leans towards 0 Cancer. 0 degrees Libra, west equinox. Why do I say that? Because that degree of Earth's zodiac, of the tropical zodiac, is due west of the center of Earth, where we all connect. So one day each year, the Earth in its orbit about the sun is aligned in such a way that Earth's north pole is leaning towards the light, right? Summer solstice in the northern hemisphere, winter solstice in the southern hemisphere. But either way, north stis. You see, at that point, the sun is north of Earth, right? Well, a few months later, right, the sun is now west of Earth, because north is that way, west, you see. Now the sun is south of Earth, the south pole of Earth, leaning towards the sun. Southstis, sun ingressing Capricorn, when the sun shines directly above Earth's Tropic of Capricorn, right? There's probably 50 globes and boxes around me, but a couple of hands will do the trick, I think. As you've heard me say a million times, and I will say them more than that, in times we currently perceive to be the future, like so many sacred systems of ancient wisdom traditions, the tropical zodiac is directionally aligned. All right. Well, what's between east and north? Northeast. All right. And so the sun is east of the earth when sun ingresses Aries. And that's why I call that east equinox, right? The last time I was on was a couple of weeks ago speaking, asking this question, is Christ the sun in our sky? And kind of getting into some of the sacred astronomy of Easter and Ostara and East Equinox. All right. Go check that out if you missed that one here on Storytelling Hour. Well, in between the sun's moment of being east of the earth and the sun being north of Earth, let's do it like this, right? So again, this fingernail is Earth's north pole leaning towards the sun when the sun ingresses Cancer, north stis. And the sun at that time shines directly above Earth's Tropic of Cancer. They'll tell you there's no astronomy to the tropical zodiac because they're ignorant. All right, anyway, so what's between east and north? And the answer is northeast. And the sun is exactly northeast of the center of Earth with respect to Earth's rotational axis, the spine of Gaia, the world tree, when the sun is at 15 degrees tropical Taurus, right? So we call that a cross quarter point, and the sun is not there on May 1st. Depending on the year, because of the weirdness of leap days, right? At May 1st, the sun is either at like the 11th degree or the 12th degree of Taurus. So, for example, May 1st, 2024, the sun was at 1152 Taurus. 2025, well, 11 and a half Taurus. It tends to be there. And then in leap years, it can like jump up to 12. So it's in like that zone, right? It's not right at 15 degrees. Now, there is a chance that traditionally these cross quarter times with the sun in between equinoxes and solstices, or between solstices and equinoxes, were actually celebrated when the sun was halfway. In fact, they still are and have long been in the Chinese tradition. Many are familiar with the Chinese luni-solar calendar. And the idea of shifting from the year of the dragon to the year of the snake, for example. And the idea of like Chinese New Year having something to do with the new moon, or really the first visible crescent after the moon conjoins the sun. But when? And the answer is around the beginning of spring. Well, when does that happen? Equinox, right? Wrong. Not in that tradition. And there's a solar calendar in the Chinese tradition that has what's called 24 solar terms. Yeah, it's interesting, like the 24 hours of the day, they divide the year also into 24s. So let's bring in somebody who's not from China, but is probably from everywhere. And this is Jehuti. Twice. Jehuti being the scribe you may know as Thoth or Thought. Thoth, maybe. From Kemet, from the land we now call Egypt, yes? Typically depicted as the ibis bird, but also as baboon. And did you know that there's like, I don't know what a good number is, but thousands, I think, more of discovered mummified baboons and mummified ibis birds in Egypt? Why so much respect for these beings? Because they significated Jehuti, who you may know as the scribe. But Jehuti is many, many things. Like you may know Jehuti as Hermes or as Mercury, probably that same being come to earth to educate us all. Jehuti, it said, created astrology and language and math, sacred number, and much, much more. Calendars. You know, the way that we time. What is time is this fascinating question, right? Like, try to define time without using time in the word time in your definition, or without using an example. I mean, physics can do this, but I mean, that's just like a really interesting thing to play with, you know. The examples that I like to use when I contemplate time is my embodied experience of the seasons of the year and the seasons of the day. And they're pretty undeniable in the embodied, incarnated, earthly experience. Now, I can contemplate these things astronomically as I experiencing the shift of the sun through the houses by day or through the signs by year. And, you know, according to my astronomical training, the sun is moving through the houses each day because the earth is spinning. You know, there's plenty of folks on YouTube who will say that's the greatest lie we've ever been sold. Well, I'm buying. Anyway, and that the sun is moving through the signs. Why? Because Earth is orbiting the sun. So it's a very beautiful truth, if indeed that is true, which is that as we experience the sun in its daily motion through the houses, and as we experience the sun as its yearly motion through the signs, we're actually really experiencing the earth, right? When we're experiencing the sun moving through the houses, the hours, we're experiencing the spinning of this planet that we are part of. When we experience the sun moving through the signs, we are experiencing the orbit of this planet that we are part of. And see, Jehuti for me shows this, right? Because the ibis or the ibis is a migrational bird, migratory bird. Migratory? Yeah, I think so. It flies south from Egypt for the winter. Well, so does the sun, right? Like the sun moves to its southern extreme. That's the Tropic of Capricorn at Egyptian winter solstice, because of course Egypt is a northern hemisphere place closer to the equator than where I currently reside in California, but regardless, like north of the equator, right? Most of Egypt north of the Tropic of Capricorn. So if you're in Giza, for example, or Heliopolis, right, or Alexandria, as it's called these days, right? Like what's happening with the sun in wintertime? It's at its southern extreme, right? And therefore lowest in our sky. And then it comes back, right? And so do the ibis birds, right? And so for me, the ibis is the annual expression of Jehuti, right? And that would be like the year count, the annual calendar. Well, the baboon is of the day. Why would we say this? Because baboons will literally compete with the others of their tribe for highest ground so that they will be the first to receive the rays of the rising light at sunrise. Love to see this at some time from a distance. I think supposedly it's quite a raucous affair of baboons like competing for the high ground and screaming and dancing, you know, as the sun rises, which is amazing. We should all do that. So Jehuti, many associate with the moon. Like some will say the ibis because the ibis has that curved beak that looks like a crescent moon. But there's another being that is the moon of the Neteru of Kemet, you know, which you might call gods and goddesses. They didn't necessarily, from what I understand. They're principles of nature. And Kansu is moon, you know. There's beings for sun, Kepher, Ra, right? Horus, which some might pronounce hours, or horizon. These all come from Horus, you know. So Jehuti is not those things, but he's the one that tracked those beings to help us find a calendar. And calendars are a great gift, but they can also take us away from our experience of time. Calendars and clocks, you know, a clock is a calendar of the day. And how has it taken us away from our experience of time? Well, we've come to believe, like it's right now, it's 4 minutes till noon. I'm speaking at 11:56 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time. Well, that ain't noon. Like we used to call noon the middle of the day, halfway in time between sunrise and sunset, when the sun reaches its daily height and the shadow is shortest. And by the way, in the northern hemisphere, that's the sun southing and the shadow norths. So all you have to do is draw a line in the ground. I haven't done it here yet, actually, in our new place yet. When this shadow is shortest, draw that line in the ground. How do you do it? Draw lines of the shadows throughout the day. The shortest one is north. Or if you live in the southern hemisphere, the shortest line is south. Either way, it's on the meridian, north-south, right? Now you've aligned to Gaia's spine. The cardinal directions are defined by the world tree, by our rotational axis, right? All you have to do is work with the midday sun. And now you have north-south, right? And there, of course, you have east-west. And you could divide those 4 into 8 or 12. Might be harder to do. Why don't you set out and see if you can make 12 divisions of your quesadilla? Or 24. So where did the 12 and the 24 come from? Anyway, there's a time it's said that when humanity was falling from grace, really, and falling in consciousness in all ways, this is when Jehuti created language, so that our wisdom would not completely disappear as our capacities did. And he went to those, it said, higher than him and bragged about this creation. I have preserved human wisdom. And they're like, you fool, you have destroyed it. It's an interesting thing to consider, like, do books preserve wisdom or destroy it? Now, a guy who calls himself Gemini is probably going to go for the former, but at the same time, like back in the day, it was all about being the storyteller. In the bards, it said we're able to kind of recite these just epic tales that would take days to tell. If people could just like literally speak the Torah or something. And as we've kind of taken a space, in scripture and papyrus and books and, digital space now, whatever, it's like, we don't have to do that. Think about how many phone numbers you knew when you were young. How many do you know now? I know 2 to 4 phone numbers. I know my number. I know Anna's number. I think I could get my mom. I could not, by my memory, contact my father, my sister, who I speak with regularly. Now I could find them. I could get to them, and I could do that without GPS. And I can't say that for others that I know. But it's crazy, right? Like, and maybe it's not. Maybe that convenience. Can you hear that siren? I feel like I should be running somewhere, but I don't know where to go. So, but that's like an emergency siren. Anyway, it was super nice knowing all of you. I really appreciate you spending time with me as you have during these weeks in Storyteller. Planets Pixel says first Wednesday of the month tests. Is that a thing? It's over. Now something's talking. I feel like I'm in Lost. Yes, it's the noon emergency alarm test. So at noon on the clock on the first Wednesday of the month, I should expect this. Air raid siren, says Discerning Light. Living in the city. Used to have it in San Francisco, but no longer. What kind of emergency? I don't even know, but something's wrong. Okay. Anyway, so I'll learn more about that. I appreciate you all educating me. What an interesting thing to share together from this new space. Right. Anyway, I don't need to like go much deeper into that. You know what I'm saying. Does math help us connect with number or take us away from it? It's like that's in that same realm of contemplation. And I think it's up to us to reconnect to natural time while also utilizing the convenience of clocks and calendars. Anna and I will be opening up the second year of constellations at 9 a.m. Pacific time on Saturday, May 10th, right? So what are all of those constructs? What do you mean 9 a.m.? What is that? What is Pacific time? Dare I say Pacific Daylight Time? What is May 10th, 2025? Like, what is all that stuff? Right? And these, of course, are like constructs that we have created to align with time, with the seasons of the day, the seasons of the year, right? I mean, if I want to have a school, especially to have a school where people are scattered around the globe as they are, We have to have these systems that allow us to connect. Now, I could, by the way, and I have to cast a chart to do this, so let me. And why don't we do this together? Oh. No, I'm on not my computer, so I'm not sure I'm going to be able to. Let's find out. Yeah, I'm not going to be able to share screen. So whatever, you can take my word for it that when I cast a chart for 9 a.m. Pacific time on 5/10/25, that the moon is at 28. Oh my gosh. Speaking of time, how about those eyes? Yeah, 2802 Libra. Oh, we could get more specific, 280244 Libra. Okay, well, how do I know? Because I just push buttons on a computer and I like trust the chart. So how would be being like inviting you to meet me when the moon gets to 28.2 Libra be any different than me saying, hey, convert to your own time zone, but we're going to be live at 9 a.m. Pacific time on May 10th, 2025, right? It's like, and especially given the truth that the moon will be at 2802, 27 and a third days later, and after that, and after that, and after that, I probably have to get more specific, maybe speak about where the moon and the sun are, right? And really, this is how the calendars came about. And as I shared before, look, the tropical zodiac, it's just the best calendar ever created, annual calendar created, solar calendar ever created, right? Some suggest that there used to be 360 days in a year. And we have ancient sacred calendars of 360 days. Maybe there is a great story about Jehuti and the moon. When Jehuti felt the pain of Jeb and Nuit, who were separated. He is brother Earth and she is sister Sky, right? And they could not embrace in this love that they long had for one another because they had to do their thing as Earth and heavens, Well, he heard their pain and he was like, look, I'm going to break this curse that had said that they were not allowed to come together for each of the 360 days of the year. He's like, well, just make more days. And the way that he achieved this was to defeat Khonsu, the moon, again and again in the ancient game of Senate, right? It's kind of like chess-ish. And Jehudi won again and again and again because Jehudi's mad smart, yeah. And for his winnings, he demanded that the moon increase his light. And somehow that gave us 5 more days outside of the 360. And in those 5 days, Jeb and Nuit were allowed to come together and consummate their love. And what came forth from this? Isis and Osiris, or Asur, Aset, and Nephthys, and Set, right? Whose name we still recite every day when we shift from the daylight to the night. Yes, when the sun sets. So, was there an actual astronomical happening that story celebrates? I mean, there is a chance that the moon somehow got closer to the Earth. What would happen as a result? And, I'd have to do the math. But when I contemplate this, it feels right to say that if moon was closer to us, if there was more attraction between the two as a result, that the conservation of momentum would compel the Earth to spin a bit more quickly. Well, if the Earth spun just a little bit more quickly, but the length of the orbit did not change because the distance between Earth and Sun remained the same, then we would have more days in a year. So I feel that that tale might be speaking about a time when the moon got a little bit closer. This would, of course, also bring a larger moon in our sky and therefore a brighter moon in our sky. We hear from Jen here that there's an Indian story about this too. I'm thinking now suddenly about Ganesha throwing his tusk at the moon, which is a very different tale, but speaks about phases. So anyway, maybe that's true, or maybe the 360 degrees of the zodiac was just an approximation of the 365-ish days in a year. We know it's about 365 and a quarter days in a year. And that the 360 was just a way to approximate that period of days with an abundant number. An abundant number is not deficient. That an abundant number is defined by one whose products have a sum that is greater than the number itself. All right, so let's play that game. Let's talk about 10. 10 is a deficient number. 10 has what products? What goes into 10? And the answer is 1 in 10 and 2 in 5, right? So 10 offers polarity, right? 5 and 5, and that's it. So we have 1, 2, and 5. 1 plus 2 plus 5 is 8, which is less than 10. 12 is not deficient. 12 is the first abundant number, right? 12 has polarity, 2, 6. It has triplicity, 3 and 4. Quadruplicity, 4 and 3. What I like to call hexaplicity, 6 and 2, right? This, as any astrologer knows, a beautiful truth of 12 is we get 2, 3, 4, 6, right? 6 axis, 4 triplicities or elements, 3 quadruplicities or modalities, 2 polarities. Yeah. And if we take 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 6, we get 16, which is greater than 12. And so 12 is the first abundant number, the sum of its products. Am I using that word right? Is greater than the number itself. Well, 360 is like that. It's like one of the most abundant numbers ever, right? So divide 360 by 2, by 3, by 4, by 5, by 6, by 8, by 9, by 10, by 12. I mean, you can just keep going, right? 365 is not like that. Divisors, what's the word I'm looking for? Anyway, how many are there for 365? And like 10, you can now not like 10 because 365 cannot be divided by 2, right? It actually only has divisions of what is it? 73 and 5. What's 73 times 5?
73 times 5.
Yeah, 365. That's the only way. So, but you can also divide by 5, right? Like there's things you can do. But when you sum them all up, you're not going to get a number greater than 365. So 365 is said to be deficient. And look, the year is actually 365.242 days, right? And like, so it just really does not have even divisions. 360 has tons of them. So it might be that 360 was used as a convenience, right? And of course, in astrology, we can divide those 360 degrees of the circle into 12 signs of 30. Why would we? And this, I wish I had some more tools around. I do have this cup of tea. Trying not to spill on the computer screen, and maybe you can't even see. Maybe easier this way. No, it's a dodecagon. It's 12-sided cup. Thanks, Omar Riverstone, for this beautiful astro cup you gave me. I had to pour Spirit's tea back into it. It's a weird thing to do, but more tea for me. This one is just a circle, kind of. Can you ever really hand bake a perfect circle? So it's going to be somewhat of an oval, somewhat of an ellipse. Well, so is our orbit, right? And this is the reason why the lengths of the seasons are not the same. Did you know that? Here's a fun thing. 52 weeks in a year, right? What is a week? That's an interesting question. Why this 7-day thing? It's kind of a quarter of a lunation, but not exactly. And I don't want to spend more time there today. But 7 times 52 is 364. So this is another about, but there's about 52 weeks in a year. And maybe you've found this truth that the standard deck of playing cards is a solar calendar in this way. You have 4 suits, 52 cards, right? So each suit has 13. Well, if the year was evenly divided by the 4 seasons, then each season would be about 13 weeks long. And it still is, right? So you get your hearts season and your spades season and your, diamond season. It's a fun fact, but if you track the days from equinox to solstice and from solstice to equinox, you will find that the seasons are not the same count. Some seasons are longer than others. Why? And the answer is because our orbit is not a circle, but rather an ellipse. And Earth is closest to the sun around January 1st, interestingly. Let's call it in Capricorn time. So when the sun's in Capricorn, Earth is closest and fastest. And we are furthest from the sun in July. Let's call that sun in Cancer time, right? When we're closest to the sun, the Earth's moving faster, and therefore the sun's moving faster in our sky through our zodiac, right? Degree by degree. And so the season that is shortest because the sun is moving fastest would be Northern Hemisphere winter. Well, if you begin winter at Samhain anyway. Wait, what? So let's talk about that and Midsummer's Dream. Most of us were trained to believe in a system that I think astronomically makes a ton of sense, which is that seasons change at an equinox or a solstice. And again, that's all about Earth's pole, right? So when Earth is in our orbit north of the sun, or the sun is south of Earth, south pole of Earth leaning towards the sun, that's the sun's Capricorn ingress. And that's a moment for the world, right? It's not some January 1st at midnight. Like, that's not even the same in Illinois as it is in California, right? But solstice is a moment. Southstice, the Earth's south pole, is leaning towards the light in only one moment, one precise moment every year. Well, how would we know? And I used to say it's when the sun sets on that tree over there. But actually now I'm sitting in such a way that it would happen over there. And I can't see it because there's a house and a bunch of trees and things. And that's just, we've changed places and I'll have to deal with that. But you can watch where the sun is on the horizon. A thing that I will do here, because I can't see that, is I will put a stick in the ground whose height will be secure, and I will track the length of the shadow at midday during the course of the year. So again, all I have to do to find the midday shadow is to draw the shadows throughout the course of the day. I will wait until a weekend on a Sunday when I can do this with Koa here, because he's now almost 10 years old. It's time for him to learn how to find midday by doing some shadow play. And then we'll draw that meridian line in the ground, and then every day he and I will find that the sun is aligned in such a way that the shadow of the gnomon of the stick is on that line at midday. I will show him then, by the way, the time on the clock and how that's not the same every day. And then I'll show him an astrology chart and show him how it's the sun at the midheaven. And he'll say, I imagine, wow. That's the hope. Don't want to push, but want to just offer the keys that will open the door for him personally if he'd like to go there. I know his father would prefer for him not to. So, con cuidado. Okay. Well, during the course of the year, that midday shadow will change length. At summer solstice, the height of the light, the midday sun, will be at its greatest height, and therefore the shortest shadow, not only of the day, but of the entire year. Whereas the longest midday shadow, not the longest shadow is at sunrise and sunset when it's just infinite, right? But the longest midday shadow, so the longest shadow I will see on that line that I've drawn on the ground, will be at winter solstice time, right? The lowest midday sun casts the longest shadow. And then I can just track throughout the course of the year, but I don't think we're going to be at this place that long, that the shadow gets longer and then the shadow gets shorter. And just every year it goes back and forth. All right. Well, this is one of the many ways that we've tracked time since recorded history, at least back to the Mula Pin, which is the ancient Babylonian, even referencing Sumerian study. What do you think all those obelisks were for in Kemet? And I imagine that in India, in China, we could find scriptures speaking about all of this as well. Well, interestingly, though the equinox shadow will be in between the solstice extremes, or let me say another way we can experience this is by watching where on the eastern horizon the sun rises throughout the course of the year, because it will do this. It doesn't actually hit a wall. Well, it does. That wall is called the Tropic of Capricorn. And then it hits a wall called the Tropic of Cancer. And it turns around and just goes back and forth like this, right? But maybe you've noticed that the sun does not rise in the same place every day of the year, or even one day to the next. Or maybe it's more convenient for you to watch the sun set. Same thing is happening. The sun is setting furthest north of east at Cancer solstice, northstice, and the sun is setting furthest north of west at northstice, and setting furthest south of west at southstice, at Capricorn solstice, right? So it's just like that. The sun walks the horizon throughout the course of the year, stopping solstice. The sun stops at the tropics, tropikos, Greek for turnaround, stopping to turn around at the solstice extremes, the bounds of the sun's path, right? And so that's another way that we can record the year. And halfway in between those solstice extremes is the equinox. Due east on the rise, due west on the set. So there are ways where we've long recorded these extremes and these midpoints. Now, well, here we are at this cross quarter time. Sun at 15 fixed sign, right? So the solstices and the equinoxes, importantly, they're cardinal, as I said before, and I'll say a million more times, like so many sacred systems of ancient wisdom traditions. The tropical zodiac is a directional device. In fact, I would suggest that the energy of its signs are directionally defined? Well, the cardinal cusps are aligned to Earth's cardinal directions, as I've been saying a million times, right? Cardinal directions defined by Gaia's spine, the world tree, the rotational axis of our planet, right? And as that northern side of the spine leans towards the sun, that's Cancer solstice, north stis, you see? Well, why 12 signs? Why not 8? 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64. Where is 12 in that binary code? It's not there. Where's 24? That's actually not there either, right? So it's really fun to consider the truth that the binary sequence is not just the same sequence as even numbers. We're doubling. When you were a single cell one, you became two, mitosis. Each of the two became two. So 1, 2, 4. 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64. That trip, right? It's like right at the heart of Uranian cosmobiology. And it's in like the harmonic sequence as well. And musically, it's octaves. Right? You double the frequency and you hear the octave of the pitch. Double it again, the next octave, the next octave, the next octave. Right? So this is something I'm very interested in, not helping people like not only see, because you can't see the music necessarily. You can with an oscilloscope, right? But to like experience and practice. So one of the things that's going to happen in constellations this year is we'll be working with number and time, so musical harmony, frequency, and we'll be working with number and space, sacred geometry, right? And in doing so, we will actually find how 12ness is as natural as it gets. We will experience through our own creations and practices that creation creates in 12s. But it ain't how you cut the quesadilla, Jack. All right. You go 2, 4, 8, right? And so it is with these cross quarter dates. Now, the cardinal cusps are the places that host the sun at equinox and solstice, yes? Well, consider that's not just cardinal, it's mutacardinal, right? It's like Pisces becomes Aries, mutable becomes cardinal. Gemini becomes Cancer, mutable becomes cardinal. Virgo becomes Libra, mutable becomes cardinal. Sagittarius becomes Capricorn, mutable to cardinal, right? Like the 29, 59, 59, 59 mutable is just as much equinox or solstice as the 001, of a cardinal sign is. Well, what's in between? And the answer is the midpoint of the so-called fixed signs, right? So 15 tropical Taurus is the degree of the 360-degree wheel, right? That is halfway in between respective mutable cardinal cusps, right? So the Aries equinox, Cancer solstice, what's right in between them? And the answer is 15 Taurus, right? 45 degrees away in either direction. And those are the cross quarters, right? We took our quesadilla, we cut it in half. Let's call that the solstices. Cut it in half again, the equinoxes. All right, now we have 4. Let's cut those 4 in half. And those 8s would take us to 15 degrees, Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, Aquarius. So y'all have all been here before and studied this, right? And so some call these the astronomical cross quarters. Now, how do you know? We cast a chart. We these days push computer buttons. Back in the day, you just looked into your ephemeris. That's what the computer's doing anyway. My daughter is so beautiful and amazing and inquisitive and fun. Sorry, I was distracted. Didn't used to happen. I used to look at a wall in that direction. All right. Anyway. When you're tracking the sun on the horizon, the cross quarters are not halfway in between the equinox and solstices. When you're tracking the shadow length, the cross quarters are not halfway between the equinox and solstices. Like, they're really tricky things to know. We can track them by counting days. However, some of the years or seasons are long and some of the seasons are short. And it's like a tricky thing to do, right? So like clock, calendar, convenient, but in a way take us away from the natural time, and we can take that back. Well, so does the zodiac. We push buttons on computers these days and we get these charts, right? it's amazingly convenient, but so many astrologers won't ever learn to realign with natural time. It might even be one of these things where, Jehuti was scolded when celebrating, I have preserved human wisdom, to say, no, you've destroyed it. Now that there is writing, the bard no longer needs to learn the epic poem. Now that there are calculators, right? We don't have to know how to divide 365 by 73 and all of those things, This is fun. So Winter says, I was born just after December solstice, hence winter. And she has 3 sisters. Her sister Summer was born right before June solstice. Her sister Lammas was born on Lugnasna, right? And her sister Samhain, though her friends call her Halloween, was born when the sun was between the Libra equinox, the west equinox, and the Capricorn solstice, the solstice. I try to speak globally, and so I'm trying to avoid seasonal terms, as you can hear, but I shouldn't when a wonderful being comes forth with the name Winter. Yeah, these are amazing periods of time, and it's so cool that they've long been celebrated. And by the way, some celebrate them as the beginning of the seasons. So right now I will speak Northern Hemisphere. I like to say, Taurus reminds us that the roses need our noses. It's an amazing thing about this house that we've just been moved into. There are roses there, all over this neighborhood. I was walking the dog and the baby this morning. And it was just like, oh my goodness. It's just like you're just in rose and jasmine land. It was so wonderful. And that really feels like, we often teach that in the middle of the fixed sign, like the nature of the season is fully fixed into place. Southern Hemispherians would feel that really kind of like central essence of autumn right now is here in the Northern Hemisphere. We're experiencing the central essence of spring, right? And the sun is literally springing up in the sky, springing towards its northern extreme on the horizons, either east at sunrise or west at sunset. And you can really feel that energy, right? In the Southern Hemisphere, of course, the sun is just kind of, the midday sun is rapidly falling in the sky right now. The shadow is getting longer. In the Northern Hemisphere, the sun's springing up, the shadow is getting shorter. Do you see? Well, some actually would say that this is not the middle of spring. So I'm just going to, from the rest of this, speak Northern Hemisphere. Okay, so spring beginning at Aries equinox and ending when summer begins at Cancer solstice. And that this sun at 15 Taurus wouldn't be the middle of spring, but rather the beginning of summer. And that summer solstice is midsummer. And you can hear that in your Shakespeare, right? And there's a sense to that as well. And so getting back to the solar terms in the Chinese solar calendar system, spring begins at the time that tropical astrologers would describe as sun at 15 degrees Aquarius, right? So we're now sun, as far as the circle goes, halfway in between winter solstice and spring equinox, right? And so many would see that as that midpoint of winter beginning at winter solstice and ending at spring equinox, right? And so the midpoint, in a way, at least like geometrically, would be the sun at 15 Aquarius. People have come to call this Imbolc, though that's usually celebrated on the 1st of the Gregorian calendar thing, right, on February 1st, where maybe astrologers would look at it as the sun at 15 Aquarius. Well, in China, they do. That is the beginning of spring. So they, in that system, are not utilizing the equinox and the solstices for the changing of the seasons, but rather for the middle of the seasons, right? And so Aries equinox, to speak that from a tropical zodiac expression, is the middle of the northern hemisphere spring. And the sun at 15 Aquarius would be the beginning of spring, and then the sun to 15 Taurus would be the end of spring, right? So it's an interesting thing because, like, they're, I think the calendar that's more globally known that China has, fig tree. Anna's going to be stoked. Sorry, easily distracted. Is the lunisolar calendar. But while there will be New Year ceremonies at the new moon closest to the sun at 15 Aquarius, to speak tropically, that's not when, like, if you're a dragon or a rabbit or a dog, whatever, that was actually determined by the solar calendar. Just like if you're born in 2010 is determined by a solar calendar, right? A different one. So it's the sun at what tropical astrologers would describe at 15 Aquarius that begins the spring in the Chinese system, right? And so many others do that too. It's like between Imbolc and Beltane is the spring. Between Beltane and Lammas or Lugnasa is the summer, with summer solstice being in between, right? Between Lammas and Samhain is the fall, with the autumnal equinox being in between Samhain and Imbolc is the winter, with the winter solstice being the midpoint of that, right? But either way, we've just taken our wheel and we cut it in half, and we cut it in fours, and we cut the fours into eights. And if you're cutting quesadillas, that's how it goes. Or if you're just drawing a circle and trying to divide it, it's very natural. But it's very difficult to be precise in that way. So the geometry tools are the compass and the rule. And I can show you how to bisect an angle. And, I got to say, I feel, the right word is sadly, in the sacred astronomy classes that I've taken, all of them online, though I've taken them with teachers who are all about the sacred, they just start very mathematically like that. You have to do this to draw parallel lines. This is how you bisect an angle, without really speaking about like the sacred. It's like, dude, I came for the sacred, not the geometry. The geometry opens the sacred. That's the whole point of the thing. But I feel like there's a way to lean more in the sacred, the way that the material is presented, than into the geometry. And that's what I really hope to do. Like, why do we call it the circle of spirit? What is that? Why do we call this the crescent of soul? What is that? And when I show you how to create that crescent using 2 circles, you understand that the crescent also speaks for two-ness. And 1 plus 1 is not two-ness. Anyway, join me for that journey. Many of you already have. Many of you, I hope, will. So let me just take a moment there, please, and invite you to investigate constellations, which is the School of Earthstrology's membership community. Many of you who I'm seeing here live are already involved and very involved and participating in our study groups and sharings and all the things. And I'm so grateful for that. It's so cool to have connected with so many amazing beings. Some of you that I'm seeing here are not yet in the constellations journey. This would be the time to sign up and give it a try for a month, because we're still offering the founding rate of 16 binary code. But it soon will go to 22 per month, which I guess is a 4 or an 8. Anna actually chose that price. Year 2 of constellations is actually just beginning. We were hoping to start on May 1st, but with our move, we got pushed back. So it's typically going to be the first Saturday of every calendar month. Yeah, we're doing calendars, and we're doing days of the week. At 9 a.m. Pacific. Yeah, we're doing clocks. Scorpiana, my beloved partner, and I together will bring us into the archetype of a planet. 1 planet per month. Which I like. I worry that those of us who have been after this starry study for many years will be like, dude, that's like not enough. It's too slow. But I was given the planets in like 1 day of a 3-day retreat, which means in like 4 hours, right? And of course, I've been studying planets and their energies every day since, and before also. But I want to take a deep dive. And well, frankly, like when the School of Earthstrology's like certificate curriculum is realized, if it ever is, I'll probably spend 10 to 12 weeks with the planets. And we'll go through, I was thinking of this the other day. It'd be fun to like do the sun on a Sunday, and then 8 days later, teach the moon on a Monday. And then the tricky thing is what's third for me, because I actually want to either teach lunar nodes third or the Earth third. And then we get to Mercury. But Mercury will teach on a Wednesday. How crazy that Earth doesn't have a day. And the nodes, I'll probably just do those on a Sunday or a Monday, because the nodes are where the sun's and the moon's path intersect from Earth's point of view, right? And I want to make sure we get to the nodes, because in that way they speak for 3 before we get to Mercury, even though Mercury is thrice great. So we'll spend some time with 3-ness, but from different perspectives. And the Earth is so 4. Why? Sunrise, sunreach, sunrest, sunroot. Spring, summer, autumn, and fall, or winter, right? 4-ness and incarnation and manifestation have so much to do with one another. And this is very clear when we start studying. And I will say it's actually harder to divide a circle into 4. Much more difficult. It takes many more steps in the practice, our sister science of geometry, number and space. It's more difficult to divide the circle into 4 than it is in 6. With 6, and many of you have done it, and if you're in constellations, you will be encouraged to do this regularly. Seed of life, 6 around 1, the sacred 7. And hexagons are the bestagons, and 6 gets to 12, and on I could go. We'll play at some point with creating the old chart design, the square charts. which is an interesting map of the sky as well, but not nearly as beautifully as the circle charts these days, and the way that the computers can draw them. Like, it's gone to a whole other level. But I want us to like be in this. So anyway, every month we're going to journey with only one planetary archetype. And my hope is for those who have been in this starry study for a long time, like many, many years, many of you more than I have, you too will benefit from devoting yourself to one planet's energy for 4 weeks. What's a week? Right? So we'll do sun in May, and then June, the moon. And I think I have it written right now that we'll go to Earth 3rd, but I think we'll go to Earth 4th and do the nodes in between. And when we do Earth, we'll be speaking about angles. So 4, right? Then we'll get to Mercury, go back to 3. We'll go to Venus, 5. Mars, 4, 6. Anyway, you'll get to see. We'll play. So the way that the flow is going to go is that the first week, Anna and I will teach together archetypally. I'm excited to see how that goes. And then the Thursday following, Anna's going to lead a community coaching circle. We're really inviting us to share intentions to connect with that planetary energy. Like, how can we connect with sun? And I'll give some recommendations, I'm sure she will, in our first class. Like, I've been drinking lemon water every morning to try to rehydrate myself. You know how much tea I drink. There's coffee too, and not enough water. Come on over. I'm like, dude, lemon, like, I want to get my pee like white, celery, white, yellow. Let's drink lemon water. What about sun sign salutations? I keep saying that, sun salutations, right? Many of you here are yoginis. Like, it's not something that I've done in my life, and be good for me too. So that's going to be part of what I do, what I encourage. And I would like, we have the community of people to offer and to share how they know the sun, how they've come to know the sun, how the sun has been presented to them, what people say about the sun doesn't resonate, what does. I'm just so excited to explore this together in community, in fellowship, which is the whole point of constellations anyway. Constellations are many stars. Now, stars are suns. Everyone was a shining sun. Okay. The third week, I'm going to take an Earthstrological deep dive. What does that mean? Like, we'll be getting into the sacred geometry, the musical harmony. My friend Alyssa Luna of In the Moon Den will be helping out in some of those classes with some practices with, like, especially the sound. My voice is not that well developed, but for the sun, we'll just work on the one. So one note, one sun, and just being there, you know what I mean? And once we get to Tunis, like playing with the octave. The octave, this is buzzing at twice the frequency as the fundamental note. Oh, what if you walked around and did that for a month? What would happen for you? So many things. Chestnuts roast on open fires when you sing the octaves. Somewhere. It's just like it opens up so much, and then we'll get into the 5th. Why would we go to the 5th third? You will know. All right. So, and then the 4th, we'll just have a gathering of like your questions, my questions, your answers. I promise to answer any question as you promise, if you promise to question my answers and answer my answers and all those things, right? And we'll do that with many cameras on and group sharing. And we haven't had this going in constellations yet. I haven't done this yet, but I really want to get like the comment thread happening and the sharing. I keep saying that, but I haven't done it yet. So I have to stop using, but we're in the middle of a move and I'm surrounded by boxes as an excuse and just get it going. So as soon as I shut this down, I'm going to Constellations. I'm going to post a thing. If you are in Constellations, please comment and then post your own thing. Like, let's start that thread happening. All right. I want to hear more of your wisdom. That's like the whole point of Constellations. I don't want to ever teach without learning. And I learn every time I teach, of course, because you just get more intimately connected with the material. But I want to be in a space where I learn while I'm teaching because some of my teachings are challenged or expanded upon. And I am learning to be more open. And many of you have gotten to experience that over the years. I hope that will always be an intention of mine. All right. So cross quarter times, hopefully we've just described how that sacred 8 is interesting and played with in many ways and actually pretty difficult to do astronomically. So there'll be much more of that, by the way, in Constellations in this year. And it's interesting to be starting at cross quarter time and a little bit late, or perhaps early, who knows? And is this the middle of spring or the beginning of summer? Both. And I'm really excited to show you in harmony and in geometry. I'd prefer to say in number and time and number and space, the sacred dance between 12 and 8. You know, and it's fun that 24 is 2 12s and 3 8s and much, much, much more. Once we release this idea that number is simply a device for counting, we reconnect to like sacred number. And then I think we relieve Jehuti for in these systems created to also create the potential pitfall of us losing the kind of mystical quality in the observation of the quantity. So we're here to take that back. Everyone, if you would please consider liking this video, sharing it around. And if you're not in Constellations already, this would be a great time to give us a try. Because if you decide you like it, you're going to lock in this $16 a month, which is obviously a much easier thing than 22. But we've been offering so much. We're trying to like make that in a sense more concise, precise, and also like receiving good exchange. So many folks there have actually been asking for like more fundamental, foundational. So my intent always is to teach in such a way that will activate students who are new to the starry study, but also re-inspire the seasoned sages. And may we always be old and new. Thanks for spending some time with me, friends. Wonderful to see you. Cosmic Girl, thanks for showing up from Australia and bringing the brilliant light of Venus to us as we close. See you in space, y'all.